Good morning. I'm going to kind of made a little bit of a change. So I'm going to, yesterday we took the benchmark. Some of you still have to complete the benchmark, but Friday we won't be doing any new assignments. So you could, if you have to finish the benchmark, you can just do that today and then do this tomorrow. Um, Let me go through what you're doing today. Um, Whoops, wrong. All the way back to November 5th. Um, okay, Thursday, November 19th. We have the Texas Revolution article, and then here is the PDF. So if I go strictly to the article, I can use a link. Now, when I link it, it kind of comes up. It'll make you re-sign in. So I'm not sure if it'll work for you or not. I'm hoping it will. But just sign in as on your Google. Just sign in as Google, and then it'll work. This is just for people that want it read aloud to them. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to, just in case this doesn't work, I'm going to read it aloud in this video. Anyway, so here is the article. So if I go back to this is the actual questions. So the questions here on it's just kind of a recap of the Texas Revolution. There are about, I think there's 7 questions, and they're all basically by paragraph here in this one. So let me go back to this. So I have this open, and I'm going to go back to Thursday, November 19th. I think this will be a little bit easier to use, which is the PDF copy that I gave you. So I'm gonna remove my face if I know how here. I think I just hit this. Okay, so this is the same article that I was just on the other one. It's just a little bit easier to see. Okay, so I'm going to read this for you. The first shots of the Texas Revolution were fired in Gonzales in 1835, and Texas was annexed to the U.S. in 1845. This chronology covers all the important dates in between. So we're not getting to the point where annex means that they became part of the U.S. So we're just talking about the part when Texas was its own country. So we start with October 2nd, 1835, the Battle of Gonzales. Now, as you look on the assignment I gave you, they're going to go in each of these. So this first question is on the Battle of Gonzales. It may even be that answer. Let's read it and then we'll go back. Although tensions had been simmering between rebellious Texans and the Mexican authorities for years, the first shots of the Texas Revolution were fired in the town of Gonzales on October 2nd, 1835. The Mexican army had orders to go to Gonzales and retrieve a cannon there. Instead, they were met by Texas rebels, and a tense standoff ensued before a handful of Texans opened fire on the Mexicans, who swiftly withdrew. It was merely a skirmish, and only one Mexican soldier was killed, but it nevertheless marks the beginning of the war for Texas independence. So the first battle, if I go back to this, what was the first battle? It was the Battle of Gonzales. And one thing I appreciate as a teacher is using a highlighted color here for this. So like the Battle of Gonzales, okay, and then was the first battle of the Texas Revolution. Okay, and what was it fought over? It was fought over a cannon. And because you've highlighted this, it's easy to see what your answers are. I don't care about if it's the format's off. I know sometimes that can be frustrating when you're using this. And this is the highlight. So if you ever want to take the highlight off, that's the highlight on, and then it's none there. You may have to put it on every time for that one. So if I go back to my article. So where I got it from was right here. The Battle of Gonzales was the first, marks the beginning. That means first. And then I have they had orders to go to Gonzales and retrieve a cannon. That's the famous flag. Okay, then the second part here is the siege of San Antonio de Bexar. After the Battle of Gonzales, the rebellious Texans moved quickly to secure their gains before a large Mexican army could arrive. Their prime objective was San Antonio, the largest town in the territory. At the time, San Antonio was referred to as Bexar. The Texans, under the command of Stephen F. Austin, arrived at San Antonio in mid-October and laid siege to the town. In early December, they attacked, gaining control of the city on the 9th. The Mexican general Martin Perfecto de Caz surrendered, and by December 12th, all Mexican forces had left the town. So if we go back here, what was called Bexar? What city was called Bexar during this time? And that would I go back here, and I put San Antonio. Okay, and then I'm just going to read the rest. I'm not going to go through every one with you, but that just shows you how that is. Whoops. Okay, and then we've got, whoops. Okay. October 28th, 1835, Battle of Concepcion. On October 27th, 1835, a division of rebellious Texans led by Jim Bowie and James Fannin dug in on the grounds of the Concepcion mission outside of San Antonio. Then under siege, the Mexicans, seeing this isolated force, attacked them at dawn on the 28th. The Texans laid low, avoiding the Mexican cannon fire, and returned fire with their deadly long rifles. The Mexicans were forced to retreat into San Antonio, giving the rebels their first major victory. March 2nd, 1836, Texas Declaration of Independence. On March 1st, 1836, delegates from all over Texas met at Washington on the Brazos for a Congress. That night, a handful of them hastily wrote a Declaration of Independence, which was unanimously approved the following day. Among the signatories were Sam Houston and Thomas Rusk. In addition, 3 Tejano delegates signed the document. Tejanos are Texas-born Mexicans. Just so you know, also remember, this means that they're declaring their independence from Mexico at this time. I know you've probably heard a lot about the United States' Declaration of Independence that took place where we were declaring our independence from England. So this is the first big step to say we're going to be our own country. March 6th, 1836, we have the Battle of the Alamo. After successfully capturing San Antonio in December, rebel Texans fortified the Alamo, a fortress-like old mission in the center of town. Ignoring orders from General Sam Houston, the defenders remained in the Alamo as Mexican President and General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna's massive Mexican army approached and laid siege in February of 1836. On March 6th, they attacked. In less than 2 hours, the Alamo was overrun. All the defenders were killed, including Davy Crockett, William Travis, who, of course, was the victory or death letter, James Bowie. After the battle, remember the Alamo became the rallying cry for all Texans. March 27th, 1836, the Goliad Massacre. After the bloody battle of the Alamo, Santa Anna's army continued its relentless march across Texas. On March 19th, some 350 Texans under the command of James Fannin were captured outside of Goliad. On March 27th, nearly all of the prisoners were taken out and shot. Fannin was also executed, as were the wounded who could not walk. The Goliad Massacre followed so closely on the heels of the Battle of the Alamo, it seemed like seemed to turn the tide in favor of the Mexicans. So at that time, they're thinking the Texans have no hope. But then 1 month later, in early April, Santa Anna made a fatal mistake. He divided his army in 3. He left one part to guard his supply lines, set another to try and catch the Texas Congress, and set off in the third to try and mop up the last pockets of resistance. Most notably, Sam Houston's army of some 900 men. Houston caught up to Santa Anna at the San Jacinto River, and for 2 days the armies skirmished. Then on the afternoon of April 21st, Houston attacked. Suddenly and ferociously, the Mexicans were routed. Santa Anna was captured alive and signed several papers recognizing Texas independence and ordering his generals out of the territory. Although Mexico would try to retake Texas in the future, San Jacinto essentially sealed Texas independence. So basically, this is the story of how Texas became its own independent country. And so if you go back to here, you can go back and you can answer the questions. When was the Declaration of Independence signed? What happened at the Alamo? Who was executed at Goliad? What was the last battle of the Revolution? And then the last question that I just answered about what happened to Texas after the revolution. Well, it was no longer part of Mexico, it was its own country. So that's pretty much the whole assignment. And that pretty much sums up the Texas Revolution.